So, so let me just tell that story again. So, like, in the Marie Kondo stuff, Spark Joy, there's this whole thing about there being, like, when you take care of the things that you love and that bring you joy in your life, how that brings, like, more things into your life that do that. And so one day I did, like, a whole follow all the vibrations thing of, like, I'm gonna turn left and right and stop the car and, like, go to a park. We found a park, which is, like, a great place for Maggie to run around. There weren't, like, people, and there was just, like, some couple people playing with their kids, and there was woods to run around into, the runs, and that's where I came up with the idea of eco workouts. Like, since I don't like working out and stuff, like, why not just go do squats and pick up trash with people? Like, and, like, hey, that covers, like, is it something I want to do? Is it something that is healthy? Is it something that makes the planet a better place? Like, okay, let's tick off these things. And so, okay, that's great. And then, like, I just laid in the grass and, like, thought of more stuff and was like, I want to do a podcast and show people, like, what people can do. Because I, like, know all these amazing people from the FRC group that talk about, like, how, you know, just all, like, shit that people don't know about their bodies, like, about how they can heal and how things don't have to be that way. And just, like, we're talking so much about the messages of people coming in that were told that, like, oh, you just have this issue now, and, like,
and you have to live with it.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to be the case. So it was like that. And then also I was, like, about to buy a van and, like, travel around the country, like, immediately. And so the story I wanted to recapture on this was that, like, my friend Brian gave me this, like, beautiful walnut cutting board. I guess I'll care about my hair a little bit for
you look nice.
You look very nice. Yeah, was this, like, beautiful walnut cutting board from Williams-Sonoma, like, a couple years ago, and I've never used it because it's too pretty and just didn't seem like I didn't feel like worthy of it. Like, I guess really, if you think about it that way, it was like, okay, like, this is too good for me. And so I'm doing the Spark Joy thing and sorting out, like, what in my kitchen brings me happiness, what doesn't, like, what am I not attached to? Thank you for everything you've done for me. Put you in a box. I'm gonna donate you to somebody so you can find a better place for yourself. And Kondo says this thing about how, like, you take care of your things, like, and you treat them with respect and things that, like, when people are, like, looking for a new house, it's important for them to do this stuff before, because she's convinced that, like, the perfect house, like, they, like, almost, like, they communicate with each other, and, like, perfect house just shows up once you've taken care of the one that you have. That's kind of what I'm doing with my car right now. I'm just, like, biting the bullet and just spending the money because it feels like the right thing to do, and that's I've been sorting through that of, like, the times where I don't necessarily completely trust stuff, but at the same time, I don't have a better guidance system than what feels right. So even if I am scared about what the outcome is going to be, okay, I can still at least try my best to do the stuff that feels right, which, you know, trying to make that less and less of a disconnect of, like, a conscious decision of so just doing it as opposed to that. So as I cleared out the stuff that was, like, and only left the things that were more joyful, like, all of a sudden, like, that walnut beautiful thing seemed to fit, and I could see myself using it now. And the van that I almost bought to travel around the country on Monday, had I been able to at that moment, but then I would have had 2 cars and no extra driver. And he doesn't have a driver's license. But and it was like, it was kind of beat up. Like, it was beat up inside and stuff, but, like, seemed like good mechanically. And I already think just in, like, those 2 to 3 days of, like, all right, like, shifting myself to a higher level of vibration stuff that, like, okay, I think that van met me where I was on Monday, but here we are 3 days later. And so, like, what do you do with that, right? Like, okay, like, does that mean I just never do anything because I'm constantly rising? Like, no, I don't think so. I think everything would have been fine. He uses this GPS analogy a lot, where it's like, the GPS only tells you, like, the next turn. It doesn't tell you, like, a whole fucking thing, because then you just be like, what the fuck? And you don't know where the destination. I was thinking about, like, adding on to that about how, like, you know, you may have this internal guidance to what feels right, but just like with the GPS, like, if you get off path, so to speak, like, you aren't, right? It's all, it doesn't matter, like, okay, well, you could have gone just pointed to point B and tried to guide yourself that way, but, like, oh shit, I got confused, now I went over here. But, like, that doesn't mean you're still getting there.
Right.
It's just gonna reroute.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, and then the farther off you get, it doesn't even matter. Like, it's still gonna reroute. And then if you get into, like, fucking, like, if you believe in, like, lifetimes and things like that, like, okay, like, the farther you get, it may take longer than you have in this world in this iteration of yourself, but maybe not. Like, but you can always, like, come back to it, and it's not necessarily, like, and that's kind of where I feel like the whole like you're always going to be okay thing comes in. Like, okay.
Well, and that's where, like, if you were able to completely predict your life, then what would be the point of living it? Almost like if you were knew for certainty what was going to happen, then there would be no element of surprise. There'd be no wonder, and sometimes those surprises are happy ones, and sometimes they're sad ones. But they're all part of the package. They're all part of kind of living the best way you know how in the face of some things that you can control and some things that you can't.
I just can't come up with I still can't get to a better, like, all right, do things that feel right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but, and then like, all right, like what feels right to you, and discerning that versus like, you know, like sort of semi-arbitrary wants and things like that, but like maybe nothing is, because at the same time, I've been trying to fall in love with the idea of like, when I'm sort of thinking about the limitless possibilities that are existent in every decision that you make, and then I try to like, oh, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, but like it's never like that. Like the stuff that works out is not the stuff that you like predict. But it's like so much cooler than that is the way it always ends up. When I got my car detailed yesterday, like I never carry. Who carries checks? Nobody carries checks, right? Like. But in my little bag, like I had been thinking about using a check for a parking permit thing, and I didn't do it. And I didn't even think about it. I just like was vaguely aware that it was in my little bag, and then when I asked the guy like, oh, how do you accept payment? He was like, oh, like if you have a check, that's it. It was just like really like I don't know, just like stupid stuff like that. That people be like, okay, whatever. But like that happens a lot. Like that kind of thing happens a lot. Of like, oh, there's no way. I had no intention of getting my car detailed. You know, like all this stuff that just kind of. And maybe that wasn't even anything, but I felt like I was like, well, this seems too synergistic. Let me go ahead and write this.
Well, and I also think that's sort of a way into doing what feels good, because I think that you know, when I talk to people, or when I think about the times that I've tried to do what feels good and it feels too scary, doing something small or being aware of kind of those small synergies is a way to kind of scaffold yourself forward. Because if I don't feel, if I think to myself, you know, like I think of that meme, you know, okay, it's fuck this shit o'clock, right? and there are lots of people who are like, you know, just fuck it, I don't want to do this anymore. But really acting on that, maybe that's not what they need to do, or maybe that isn't tenable at this moment. But acting on smaller things that feel right, that give you sort of evidence that doing that is a good thing to do, or is going to take you in a good direction, or the sky isn't going to fall if you do those things.
I totally feel like I had like some training wheels like going towards things like that, like and that it still comes up from time to time. Yeah, no, I agree.
So what do you say to people who tell you, oh, that sounds really woo-woo, or that sounds, how do I go about doing that? How do I do it?
That's kind of where, like, I like the body contact stuff just because of, like, you can't logic what you're feeling physically, but it almost seems like a moral obligation to me at some point, like, of, like, the heavier light thing is a nice analogy a lot of people use, but does that feel heavy, does that feel light, and is that, like, here, and all that stuff, but, like, there's so much stuff floating around now. There's that Will Smith video where he's talking about like jumping out of the airplane and how like everything is scary and like everything you want is on the other side of fear and all that stuff, and like the worst thing is like thinking about it and all that kind of stuff. But like, I guess it's just like, do you have a better idea than doing what feels right to you? Like, does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
it's kind of where like, what do you go with?
Yeah, I go with. So for me, it got to the point where I did have to make a grand gesture in my life because I'd made a lot of choices that didn't feel right, and so I'd sort of walled myself up into this situation that just felt
walls
completely
is a really
wrong.
good word for that. It's like you're building these bricks, and that's why it takes so much. It seems like so much harder of a leap to undo.
Yeah, Yeah, and so I got to the point where I did have to make what I considered to be a grand gesture because I looked around and I was like,
Do you
nope.
feel still feel a little sick like thinking about it, like a little piece of you like, even in the past,
Absolutely.
even the stuff you did in the past that turned out like fine, you're still like
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so I, when I make what seems to me to be a grand gesture now, what I realize is that it in a lot of ways it's probably just grand in my mind. And
there's maybe some narcissism almost.
Maybe
Maybe that's not quite the right word, but like you like because like I was thinking when you were talking about the little things like that often end up being like the big things like that, whether or not it's because that was a gateway or because actually every single action that you take affects everything in the world, like in a way, in some way it does it just does because it's all the thing.
Yeah.
And you might not think it does, but it does. But like so, or even if you just think about it on like a more micro scale of like every single decision that you make does, sliding doors, it will step off the curb in front of the truck or behind it, any of that kind of stuff. Like why wouldn't you do? Like, it just keeps coming back to me. Like why wouldn't you do the things that feel right to you? Like.
So what's helped me with that is my mother, who is a wise woman, and
let's get deep.
Yeah, let's get deep. No, this will be super deep, and because in her life she's gotten to the point where her mantra is "so what, who cares," and that's super deep.
Except you.
But yeah, exactly. And so I've applied that actually to a lot of things when I get too much in my head and when I think too much about things. So what, who cares is really freeing. Like, am I going to die as a result of doing this thing that I want? Am I going to materially or physically hurt somebody? And if the answer to those questions is no, if I can see a life beyond this decision that hasn't hurt people I care about and hasn't materially hurt me.
But like, when would that ever feel okay to do?
Exactly.
Like, unless it. I guess that's subjective too. Because you can say a lot of decisions that you make, like cutting ties and things that feel right to you, hurt someone, but that also flies in the face of thinking that they're going to be fine too. Like it doesn't free them to do things as well.
Yeah.
Like I just did a YouTube video last night that was like about. It started out as like, hey, like you can't live up to. Well, really it boiled down to like to any expectations that you have of yourself, like in a lot of ways. Like it's just because, but in the positive side of that, because that having an idea or having a role model or somebody you're trying to emulate, like you, is still a limiting factor when you've decided something. And that's kind of where I'm going with a lot of stuff right now, where like yesterday, like this week has been so much of like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this, and this, and this, and like, but there's part of me that's really always like never really loved planning because like, then I feel like I've like created an obligation, which I don't really, I should still like break off stuff when it doesn't feel quite right and all that. And like seeing how I can live like any lifestyle like that. Maybe I don't have to drive around a van and do whatever I want because I feel afraid of committing to anything because it might not feel right later. There's a bigger picture there that I'm sure I'm gonna have to deal with soon. But I don't know. But that if you have some idea or some plan, like you're limiting yourself to that, and in fact you could be so much more because there are unlimited ways that you could go to do anything.
The thing for me is that eventually I feel like I need to do something, so.
What about the idea of weight though? Because I get that strong from like my internal sometimes of like weight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But waiting is doing something.
Okay. All right.
So I think that waiting is doing something, and there have been a lot of times when I feel like I should be doing something, but it doesn't feel like the right time to do something, or like I'm sort of gathering all of my resources, and eventually I do get to the point where the right thing to do, or the thing that feels right to do, makes itself evident.
Yeah, it's like kind of that hell yeah principle of stuff. Like yeah. I feel that with freaking with the venue stuff. It was funny. Like I was like, oh yeah, like this is nice. Like these things are cool. Connecticut stuff, and then like I sent her, a comment to the first person, and they didn't respond at all. I was like, okay, whatever. And then I sent something to another person, and they responded minutes before. So like the timeline was, okay, first place doesn't respond, okay, message second place. Like 1 or 2 days later, I'm looking around and thinking about how much bigger this could be, like, than just being like 2 or 4 people or whatever like that. And I was like, all right, where are places that have room for a lot of people? And I came across this venue, and I was like, holy shit, yes, this is it. And it was a hell yes. And I put in the request for that. Before they responded, the second place, right, that I had contact messages back finally a couple days later and said, yeah, craziest thing happened, a tree fell on the house. Everybody's fine, but it was just funny. It was like, and so I don't think we can like commit to the weekend because we're not sure how long the repairs are gonna take because a tree fell on our house. And then like not long after that, the place that was a hell yes responded yes. And I think that happens all the time when it's not like because I can kind of get lazy with stuff, and maybe there's a lot more weight than I'm paying attention to sometimes, because like when it's not hell yeah, it's kind of a weight. Like just sit fucking still until stuff comes in. And like I have all these ideas and things, and I would like people to try to act on more of the good ideas they come up with, because I think they give good exercises. That's something that I want to think about. But and then everything was fine, but just like when the stuff is a hell yeah, it always happens really easy. Maggie was a hell yeah, my dog Maggie was a hell yeah, like, and that was fast track, like stupid, like just like things where you're like, oh yes, this, oh okay,
yeah,
like and when they're like kind of like yeah, like they may or may not work out. It's kind of the way that it seems to go for me, like
yeah. So for people who don't have or don't like can't remember having a hell yeah experience. Because I think there are people who don't have that, who don't have that,
sure.
Who don't
if
have...
you've never asked yourself what you want, how are you supposed to know what you want?
Exactly.
Like, and if I know people with the kinesiology type stuff, with people in their bodies, where I'm like, hey, make your wrist feel good, and they're like, so that's where we come in to have to like, just like show people some possibility of stuff. Actually, I had this idea for a bit here. Can you film real quick? So let's say somebody. Oh yeah.
I gotta put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, and it's also on the front camera, so that's helpful. Yeah, so I was like thinking about, okay, like say I want to show somebody their shoulder. I think that my steps would be like, all right, start off do something that feels good for your shoulder. So this could be either step 1, or it could be like step 4 or 5. Like if they like okay, then they start experimenting and like this stuff for my shoulder is great. Or if they're like, I have no idea, like I might have to come back to it, right? And so like a couple of ideas based on the spider trap thing I did the other day. So then I might be like, all right, now we're doing the shoulder. I'd be like, okay, glue the distal end of your limb that's attached to this joint to something, and then move everything else around in as many ways as you can. Like let's see all the different stuff that you can do on this thing, and like try pressing into the wall and pushing, like see how that feels, and like just find all this stuff. Then change it up to like step 3, or interchange it with that, glue everything else to the ground. And down a little bit, yeah. And like now everything else is glued. You do put down a little more.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they're just like, yeah. So like everything else is glued to the floor now, and now you're gonna move and explore every way that you can move other than that. So it's like taking a look around the room. You're like, all right, and okay, now we're getting into controlled reticular rotation. They're probably going to like more forces now that you have some idea. And does your shoulder feel better than it did when you started? All these things, and then we can go and we can even circle back, even if they do that. All right, now do anything that feels good for your shoulder, and then you can introduce the thing. So it's like there are certainly steps you can take to introduce people to any concept that they're not sure of how to tackle right now. So like, what's something you would do with somebody like with that question of the hell yeah idea?
Yeah.
So like I go physical pretty fast with my stuff, or body work. I do, or like I'm like feel that because my awareness is usually better than people's most of the time these days.
And in my case, if we're talking to people who want to feel fulfilled and want to be doing things in their life that give them a hell yeah, a lot of times people can't get there because like we're saying, they've never had that kind of experience.
Yeah.
So
you have to be aware of something before you can use something, right? Like,
and so sometimes it takes sometimes it takes putting people into places that they don't want to be.
Yeah.
What don't you want? What don't you like? What doesn't feel good?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, people
Or
know that
easier.
a lot. It's easier
Like,
for them to get there. You know, what don't you want to do? What don't you, what drains your energy? And if you can,
That's a good, I like that.
and if you can get to there, then that's at least a starting point. Because if you can get to a point where
It's like a sculpture thing, like chipping away
yeah,
marble.
like chip away
Yeah.
all the things that don't look like the Statue of David.
Exactly.
But if you can get people, okay, this part of my job drains me. At least that's something.
Mhm.
That having conversations with this person drains me.
Yeah.
Doing this activity drains me, and sometimes that's scary for people to contemplate, because then they say,
They're
well, are you telling me?
confronting-
Are you telling?
they're
Yeah.
confronting
Are you telling me to quit my job? Are you telling me to get this person out of my life? Are you
Yes.
telling me to? And you know
I
what?
am, whether or not you're ready to hear it yet. But,
And people are frequently not ready to hear that yet.
Yeah.
But you get them to a point where at least they can acknowledge that some of the things that they're doing, some of the people that they're around, some of the ways they spend their time are draining them.
Yeah.
And the next step is for them to, and it's a scary process. The first step is for them to recognize that this is happening. The next step is for them to recognize that they actually do have choices.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be scary too. Well, are you telling me that I could quit my job? I am telling you that. I'm also telling you that there would be consequences to that. I'm telling you that
The consequences seems like a negative, but it's just the word.
Right, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. There are outcomes.
There are things that will happen no matter what you do.
There's an if-then sequence. There's an if-then structure to this. But you know what? If you say hello to someone, then maybe you'll have a wonderful experience, you know?
Yeah.
So it isn't always like a consequence of doing a good deed for somebody could be a positive thing.
Yeah.
So
And knowing the things that motivate you, like coming
Yeah.
to that, like what about that person bothers you?
Yep.
Is it because they remind you of something? Is it because
Yep.
of this? Is it because like there's got to be a reason? And and then making peace with those things and bringing it back. And I have been going like full hippie with the stuff of like finding a place of love, like with everything of like okay, like figure out something that you love about everything that you hate or fear, and like okay, like making peace with that. Like the other video I just did was about addictions and like. Which I think I define, the best thing I've come up so far is like defining addiction as anything you do mindlessly often. Basically like I automatically go to the phone, automatically do this, or drugs, whatever, like things that you just go to. But figuring out like what you get from those things. Like there was that rat study, I think I've shown you that video about that my brother sent me about like how saying like, oh yeah, like people are on heroin all the time in hospitals, it's better grade heroin than you get in the street, but they don't get addicted. Like, and people came back from Vietnam after being exposed to a lot of heroin because, like, when you're in a jungle and you might die or might have to kill some other living being, like, hey, yeah, give me the fucking heroin, like, stuff. But, like, once you get back to a supportive environment or something, you don't have the need that you felt before. So that applied to everything. Like, what is the thing that you hate about the thing? What do you feel like it's taking from you? Like, what is it? Let's get to the root of that so you find, like, a peace.
Right. And if you can get there, then there's a better chance that you won't have to completely whole cloth destroy your life.
Yeah.
Because if I get to the point where I can see
quote unquote, yeah.
Quote unquote, yeah. If I can see,
we want to teach you how to destroy your lives. I love creative destruction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
But anyway,
and not have it feel like
Yeah.
feel like such a a loss.
Bomb.
But yeah, like a bomb hitting things. But if I can see, oh, you know what, that person who is a know-it-all or who is bossy, that's coming from a place of fear for that person. That person is afraid, so that person is trying to control what's going on in the rest of his or her life, and that includes me. And having empathy and saying, I don't need to be controlled by this person, but I also don't need to have my energy sapped by this person, because I now recognize
you look good,
what's
by the way.
probably. Oh, thank you. You know what I did?
Slept well.
Here's what happened. I actually didn't sleep very long, but I took a shower right before I went to bed, and my hair was wet. And so it just made it poofy. And I was actually thinking the same thing. I was like, this is my beauty secret now, is that I'm just gonna go to bed with a wet head.
There you go.
Always.
There you go.
So
I'm sure there's
that's my
some
beauty
like
secret.
mothers in some like European country that are like crying, no, don't ever go to bed with a wet head.
Exactly. Because it gives you a cold and then you need to drink a lot of tea.
Mm-hmm.
So but if you can, but for me, yeah, exactly. But for me, it really is like, for you, it's body awareness, and for me, it's I guess inner awareness or self-awareness. And I mean, I have many blind spots. I know I do, but I have many fewer.
Does that mean that you can't? Well, that we're also helping ourselves every time. It's all about us.
Absolutely.
We're talking ourselves through things just as much as you're talking to anybody else through.
Well, and I have fewer blind spots because I've tried to look inward, and I've tried to see the way that I've tried to make the connection between the things that I think and the things that I do and the results that I get, or the outcomes that happen. And knowing that makes me better able to make choices that bring me joy and that make me happier and that make me feel safe and content. And so the knowing it can be a scary process to get there, but if you know how to leverage what you're trying to find out, then it can lead to good things.
It's funny, even like thinking about like, oh, like we're gonna show people like this video or anything like that. Like there's a little piece of me that's like, well, maybe people aren't gonna connect with the things that I'm saying, and like there's a little bit of scary stuff, and like but like I'm really working on and I have been getting better at not resisting those feelings, because it's like the letting yourself feel stuff fully, because otherwise you're just like trying to push it back in the room, that's like it's like trying to push through the door, and you're like, but it's really taking a lot of your effort to keep it there exactly where it is, even though you're trying to push it aside. But you need to like just like open it up and let it come in, and you're like, okay, fuck, like I feel nervous, like people aren't gonna connect, but that would be okay too. Like if nobody comes to the retreat, I will fucking survive.
Yep.
And I'll probably, and also the thing I love about the venue was like, I'm like, fuck, now I'm like super excited to go hang out in a fucking treehouse and like these things.
Can we stay longer?
Yeah, right, and like, I don't know, so that's like a thing too, like trying not, like, if you're just like, okay, like, don't think that, what are you gonna do?
That's all you're gonna think.
That?
Yeah,
Like,
don't think about elephants.
Yeah, exactly. You have to come into that space and allow, and like the emotional stuff, that the difference between letting myself like feel stuff and like not try to. I was watching one of those like viral videos on Facebook that comes across from time to time, where a guy puts money in a homeless guy's thing, homeless guy sleeping, guys put money in. And there's like a bunch of groups that do this now, just like, let's film homeless people and see what they do. It's like a weird thing, but like I think it's meant well. But anyway, so like, homeless guy goes to Target and buys a bunch of stuff. He's like, oh my god, like I found somebody gave me money. And then the guy who's the host goes and sits down at a bench next to him after the guy comes back with his stuff from Target. And he's like crying, like, it's like making a big like scene about how upset he is and stuff. And the guy's like, you okay, man? Like, A, homeless person fucking reached out to him. B, like, I saw somebody yesterday like walking down the street looking terrible, and people were not reaching out to them, and I'm sure that's where they are in their life and their path, right? But like, and so it's very easy to. I wish everybody would treat each other like we were all friends more. Like, I understand that tribesmanship evolved for a reason, but like, we have to think about that.
Well,
So just the go ahead. Seriously, I can actually remember this. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that one of the things that I find I resonate with in other people, and one of the things that I have found that people resonate in me is when we show our vulnerabilities. And when I don't do it in a calculated way. I just sort of, whenever I've written or whenever I've really given of myself and just been honest about, sometimes this sucks.
Authenticity.
Yeah, I think that for me, that's what keeps what I try to do in terms of life coaching and writing about the things that I experience and hoping that I can work with people to help them make their experiences better. That's for me what keeps it from being like over the top saccharine. You know what I mean? Like, you can do it and we can have a good life and blah blah blah.
Let's be real.
Yeah, sometimes it sucks, and sometimes I wish I didn't try to be self-aware, and sometimes I wish I were ignorant about everything, and sometimes all I want to do is what feels right is wallowing in self-pity. Like, sometimes that's a
Okay,
fact.
yeah, let it
Sometimes
happen.
that's a fact. And if I don't acknowledge that, and if I say, oh no, the process to self-awareness and the benefits
Involves
that you reap from,
positivity all the time.
and the benefits that you reap from self-awareness, they're always uniformly positive. That's some bullshit. Like,
Well,
it's
that's
just
an
not
interesting
true.
thing about like, okay, it's like, what is the goal? Like, what is
Yeah.
the end goal? I was watching this rehab video my friend Greg sent me. Was like great. It was talking about like people talking about like, the outcomes of rehab and stuff. And you're like, yeah, but you have to figure out like what is the purpose of the thing. So like, what is the purpose of self-awareness? To me, that means being as real and authentic as possible, and not ever feeling like you're being fake because you're not. Like, what is that? What do you think your intention would be?
In being self-aware.
Yeah, like what is the point of all this bullshit? Like, why can't we just go and do whatever? Like,
yeah, I think for me, it's that I want to have integrity inside. Bless you. And I want to have integrity outwardly. So I want to like
one person.
Yeah, and
It's not fighting yourself off, resisting yourself.
Yeah, like I want to be my biggest cheerleader instead of my worst enemy.
Yeah.
And
be your own friend.
Yeah.
That was the thing I said to this woman that was walking down the street, beat the shit yesterday, because I was like, if you saw your friend walking down the street like this, like what would you do?
Yeah.
Like what would you say? Like what would she would say? And she was like, I want them to be safe. And then it comes into like, well, what does safe look like to you? What does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Because it probably is completely different than whatever I think. And that's where like subjectivity has been a driving force for me forever.
Yeah.
From like libertarianism to dynamic systems theory to economics, all this stuff. Like I can't decide for you what is right for you. We can't. The point of what we're doing is trying to guide people to, like you said, take your own good advice, guide them to your own thing.
Yeah.
Like if your idea of safe is sleeping on the street because that's what feels right to you, I have no place to say.
Yep.
And also you're not going to do it. And if you do, you're not going to really.
Right. If
like,
I tell you, you know what,
I
know what you need.
Exactly.
I know what you need, and that is that's
Socratic
and that's the
method
crux
is great.
Yeah, and that's at the heart of coaching, is the idea that I don't know what's best for you. You know what's best for you.
What do you want?
Yeah.
Just trying to help people, guide them to what they want.
Yep. And help guide people to what they want, and help encourage them to believe that it's okay to want what they want. That's really important.
Let's just sit on that for a second. Oh man. Yeah.
How many people do you know who may want
They
things
feel guilty for wanting.
or like how many people do you know who had like an alternate career plan? Like, I wanted to go into art, but my parents made me go into business, or something like that. And that's just one example of things that people want but think they shouldn't want. And I feel like as a coach I have a couple of roles. One of them is to help people figure out what they want. Another one is to, like I said, encourage them to believe that it's okay, and even encouraged to want what they want. And then I can also help with accountability. And again, accountability is a loaded word, but it's just a word. Mm-hmm. It's just an idea of, I'm a friend, I'm a colleague, I'm a person. Path. Yeah, I'm a person who can.
Let's check in. How you doing?
Exactly.
You can saying how are you to someone is accountability.
Yeah, and
it's caring.
If you tell me I want you to help me hold myself accountable for this list of things, and then nothing on that list gets done, that's not good or bad. That's simply useful information. You made this list of things that you wanted to do,
these are probably not
or
what
that you said you wanted to do, and you didn't do any of them.
Yeah.
So
what does that mean? Where does that take us next?
Exactly. So how do we modify this, or what do we do to get you to a list of things that you actually will do? And again, if you make another list and don't do any of those things, it's not good or bad. It's more information. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe for the people who've never
start writing down what you're actually doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
and
just like your other side.
And so for me, maybe for people
it's
who
like
haven't
there's two ways to get to any path. Like I can create a frame between us by moving you or moving myself. Like all right, maybe we need a different strategy to get around the garden.
Exactly. Yeah. And so one of the things that I love about, I just enjoy your company. But one of the things that I like about the idea you had for us to work together is because it seems like it's sort of the care and feeding of the entire person. There's the figuring out what you want for yourself, and then there is the literal physical structure that you need.
And having it be like, you are a whole person.
Yeah,
like,
to help you get what you want, both physically and internally.
That's a great tip about something I do want to talk about. There's a couple points that I want to write. So I want to finish that story.
Yes.
I want to talk about what success means, like, and how to define that for people, and also like how I got into more of the spouting off hippie nonsense, right? All right, but like the story thing was just that like, and that can come anytime and stuff. But the story thing was just like, okay, so homeless guy comes back with Target stuff. Other guy acts out that he's upset on the bench. What's wrong? Okay, the guy goes, all right, oh man, like, my daughter needs this medicine. He gives, like, you know, a story you can't argue with, right? The daughter needs this medicine. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. Guy says, are you going to be here for a minute? Homeless guy says, are you going to be here for a minute? Like, he thinks for, like, seconds. And then he asks him, the actor to hold his backpack for him, watch it. He goes back, returns all the stuff to Target, comes back, gives him the money. And the guy is, like, so touched, he gives him another $500. I don't know, I'm not sure how much money he gave him initially, maybe it was $500. Comes back and is so touched, gives him another $500. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, other than like the feel-good side of it, was that the homeless guy starts crying, and the guy's like, "Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry." And I get it, but like, we've got this thing that we're like, oh, cry. You know, you hear that with like guys talking about like girls relationship and stuff. Even like, don't, if you don't cry, like, that's anything. Like, what if you just let them cry it out? Like, and like that's gonna that chokes something up inside when you like try to stifle something like that down. Like, let him sob. Like, and you're like, yeah, let it out, man. Like, you deserve better than this. Like, let's get this out of here.
And some things are not, I believe, some things you need to process physically. Right?
Yeah.
You know, and you can go back after the fact and say, wow, I really processed some shit, and this is what I was thinking about, and this is what I was feeling. But you can't circumvent that process. You have to feel the feels first, and then you get to talk about it later.
That was one of my ideas today. It was like, I should resume T-shirts.
Yes.
Like things that
ooh, we should do a retreat T-shirt.
Just like a bunch of,
or like
just a bunch of shit and stuff. Man, those Lululemon bags that everybody has and nobody knows how they got. Like, I have like 3 of them, and I've never shopped at Lululemon in my life. I have no idea how. But like, I was staring at the bag in my house the other day. There's actually good advice on the bag. I was like, wow, all right. They actually have like realistic things about like helping the planet and like caring about yourself. And like, it's not just like, I was like, all right, maybe I'll shop. Maybe that's why they're so successful. Is because they actually like have something behind what they're trying to do.
A substance. Like Ben and Jerry's.
Like Ben and Jerry's. Good stuff.
So the other thing you wanted to talk about was what success means.
So that kind of goes into like the parents giving you pressure stuff about like what you're going to, or like, you know, the willingness to change from something that used to make you happy but doesn't now. But you've been doing it for 15 years, so I guess you just do this now.
Right.
And like, even if it's not making you happy, like, so like trying to like either recapture that or what. But like, I think we must have good memory, by the way. I think so. I keep you around.
I listen.
What a good. She listens to me better than I listen to me. And that's the point, is having an external, right? Somebody that actually listens. Mm-hmm. But the thing with like, we're obviously measuring success in some weird, fucked up ways in the world, right? Because how many celebrities have to come forward and talk to you about Jim Carrey and Will Smith and everything, about how like, I wish you could have everything so you know it's not the answer.
Or just every VH1 behind the music. Like, all of them. All of them are like,
are we dating ourselves here?
Probably, but it's
around?
A good show. I don't know, but like, watch any of them, because they'll be like, and they were riding high, but the fall was soon to come.
And then MTV Cribs comes in and is like, no, don't look at that. Look at this over here, shiny.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Pimp My Ride and all these things. But like, then you hear about all these like documentaries on lottery winners and how like, if they weren't actually, Kelsey talks about all the time, like, if you envision yourself as a person that only makes this much money, then you're always, okay, then you're just fine. Okay, that's what you are. Yeah. So if something else comes up, you reject it. Yeah. In whatever way that comes around, even if it takes a couple years for you to get rid of the $40 million, like, you still reject it because you don't feel like, so that's your own guidance creating authenticity for you, because that's how you really feel you are. Mm-hmm. even if you have this other thing, it's going to start pushing stuff away. So that's why it has to be a real change. It has to be something you actually want. It has to be things that you will actually do on your list because it feels right for you to do that.
Yeah.
Like, so like what, and obviously money is the big thing that always comes back for people of like, okay, well, all right, yeah, I'll do everything that makes me happy, but like, how's it going to pay my bills?
Mm-hmm.
And so we equate money with happiness. We equate money with security. We equate money with like all these things, but like instead of being like a value. So like this, the little baby steps, like this, the shoulder drill version of that for me would probably be something like, okay, like, well, what is something that you want to do? What is the smallest step you can take in that direction? I think somebody was talking about like, if you wanted to start the new Pandora and you don't know how to do anything, you start making music recommendations to your friends based on what they like and see, have them rate what you recommended. Okay.
Yep.
And the resources available to us nowadays, like everybody should be more appreciative of the fact we're out of the food chain. Like, you don't have to worry about getting eaten.
This is true.
Not doing what you want is a disservice to all of the millions of generations of humans and Homo sapiens that created that opportunity for you, so that you can worry about all this bullshit in the first place. Because otherwise, you would not be distracted because you're worried about dying.
You're worried about like, did we live among the mastodon? Like, was a mastodon a predator to us?
No, that's like an elephant thing.
Okay.
Like, we killed them.
Oh,
yeah. Anyway, but that was on the way to our not doing this stuff. And then like, okay, so like worrying about the stuff is like hilarious anyway. But like, okay, so let's take you into what's the smallest step that you can take towards what you want, and like getting those, like you talked in the beginning, like those like baby steps. Okay, let's try this little thing. Like, and how does that feel? And like, oh, that feels kind of good, doesn't it? Which is the same thing as like an addiction, except for trying to make you addicted to the feeling of authenticity.
Yes.
Because I've decided in my subjectivity that is a good thing. All right? Like, I want you to do what feels good. And if you have an argument against that, then okay. Yep. And that's, I have to be detached from that too. Like, okay, if you don't feel it's not good to feel good, and then you're not ready. Yeah. Yet. Yep. But like, let's think about like, what can you do right now? Like, let's give you a baby step to move forward from that. So like, do you agree with that, and where would you take it? I do,
and one of my absolute favorite authors is a woman named Martha Beck, and she is in my
mind. Is that the one in the book you said?
Yeah, so she wrote a book called Finding Your Own North Star: Choosing the Life You Were Meant to Live.
And I always talk about like, we're gonna give out books for the ones that we care about the most. Like, yes. Mine is Marie Kondo, Spark Joy, the second one. I accidentally downloaded the second one and I really like it, so I'm just gonna go with that. Cool. Right.
Yeah, so I love this book. I love her, and she's had just a gamut. She runs the gamut of the kinds of experiences she's had, the highest highs, the lowest lows. And so she is someone who I think is very authentic in terms of, nothing that she tells you to do in terms of being authentic or finding the things that you are meant to be doing in your life are things that she hasn't done like a million times before. Okay, maybe not a million, but like 100 times before. And she talks about what she calls turtle steps. So a turtle step is smaller even than a baby step because turtles have like a big shell on them and stuff. And so, a turtle step could be something like, if you get a phone call from someone who drains you, just pretending that you're not available to answer the call. And maybe 5 minutes later you pick up the phone and call that person and then you get drained. But for that 5 minutes, you did something, you took a turtle step in the direction of something that felt better. So those are the kinds of things that, those are the kinds of things that you can build on. And it seems like it takes a long time, but the time's going to pass anyway, like to use the analogy of, there are people who are like, oh, I'm too old to go to school. I'm too old to do this. I'm too old to do that. Well, the time's going to pass anyway. Yeah. So, if you want to go to school for ceramics and you have the time and the wherewithal to go.
Well, we all have the same amount of time too. Let's get it's priorities of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. If you make the time, you make the time and and that's something that you want to prioritize, that time's going to pass anyway, so it might as well pass doing something that you have decided is a priority for you.
And there's the let's say you decided you wanted to do the ceramics class, and then you start it and you realize that you're not having such fun as you thought it was. But I already paid for it, so I'm just going to keep doing it, even though you have unlimited possibilities of other things you could do. So okay, so you made an agreement, and I think that should be honored too. But giving yourself the freedom to like I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to go to a concert I spontaneously bought tickets for tonight, which wasn't expensive anyway, but like I think that applies to everything. Like if I like went to school for $40,000, which I never went to college and I'm okay with that, but like if I went to school and spent all that money and like, oh well, I have to do this now because I spent the money, that also again tells us how much money plays a role in what we think is success and stuff. But like, all right, well, yeah, so okay, going back to the sort of that question of like the money involvement stuff, like could you be like, let's say you had no money but you were happy, let's just create that. Most people can't imagine that concept for one thing, but let's just taking it to imagination land. Okay, let's say you had no money but you were happy. Would you be okay with that? Right? And then okay, so what if you had all the monies and you weren't happy? Would you be okay with that?
I would not be okay with that. I think there are a lot of people who make it okay.
And or we're just like, well, that's impossible. Like I would be happy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and so I don't know. So that's something to think about. Like, okay, but if the energy that comes with doing the things that you love and you are happy and like you're excited about doing, you've taught classes where people didn't want to be there. How does that go?
Not great.
Right? And what about a class where everybody wanted to be there and was excited?
Oh, it's amazing.
What is the success rate of the people based on that parameter of the success being getting something out of that class, right?
Absolutely.
Like, yeah. And you could argue the other people were successful too because they didn't want to do it, so they didn't succeed, right?
Exactly.
So okay,
yeah.
And so like you get success when you do things that you care and are happy about.
Yeah.
Like
and you know, to the point that you've made, the expectations that you set for yourself, you'll live up or down to them, you know, and as someone, you mentioned that you didn't go to college, and I did. I went to college and then I went to graduate school, and I know it's not me, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because I went to.
She's a PhD.
Don't hold it against me.
So if you want like credentials,
don't hold it against me. But we basically both have we basically both have a PhD because we both have black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's something
we've been doing it for a long time.
We've been doing it for a long time. We're like
and observing.
Yeah,
and
observing.
Yeah.
But the reason that I brought it up is because I went to, particularly for graduate school, when I went to graduate school, the message that you received was that someone with the degree that I got was going to go into higher ed and become a Tweety professor. And I decided kind of early on that I wasn't interested in that. And I mean, there were a lot of reasons, but and there were a lot of reasons for that, but there weren't very many models for people who were interested in doing other things. But the degree that I have is applicable in so many different contexts, and I find myself pulling from it.
And what is the degree you have again?
It's in educational psychology, learning theory, contexts of learning, motivation, instructional design. So I've done all kinds of things related to learning and education and educational structures and systems, and that subject matter is applicable everywhere, everywhere. And so it really is kind of the sky's the limit in terms of how I might want to use it. And so it's come in so handy with the things that I've decided to do. So, back to your point about the ostensible reason that you do something, or the ostensible reason that you have an experience, isn't necessarily the true reason, or it isn't necessarily the only reason that you would have that experience or that you would do that thing.
Yeah. Thinking about like the connotations on words, what's the connotation for the word trailblazer? Positive, negative?
Let's see. For me, or how it's perceived?
Well, it's the only person that we can tell.
I mean, yeah. So for me, the connotation of the word trailblazer is, I think it's positive and exhausting.
Oh,
I think it can be tiring. I think it can be tiring to.
Yeah.
And if
that's information.
Yes. It's absolutely. And I don't judge it either way. I
think if more people were honest, they'd probably say the same thing. Because I think the general perception would be like, yeah, great, trailblazer. But then like, all right, now you have to do it. Would be like, oh my god.
Yeah, well, so think about the first time you ever did anything. So think about the first time you ever tried to bake a cake. How much like cognitive
Buy apples.
energy. Buy apples.
The first time I bought apples and it was the same Walmart trip. I was buying apples and tissues for the first time in my adult life. I was like, there are so many options, and that wasn't even like a Whole Foods like apple display. It was like there was like 4, and how many kinds of tissues are there? Yeah. Anyway.
So the first time you bought apples, it took a lot of cognitive load, and then the second and third time, like it was easier.
That's some idea what I like. You know,
Yeah, and you know what? If you could also, maybe not back then, but you know, you're not that old, but maybe you could have found a YouTube video explaining how to buy apples.
Yeah.
But if you're truly blazing a trail, then you're the person who has to figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, how about the first person that like just tried to figure out whether or not this is a poisonous thing you're gonna eat? How many people died figuring out mushrooms? Like, yeah. So there's that. So yeah, you could die. You're right.
Yeah, I guess you could die.
And maybe we'll cut that one out. No. No, honest authenticity of stuff.
But
like nothing new gets done without it being done first. And it's always new in the world because you're a different bunch of molecules than I am.
Yeah.
So the first time you do a thing is the first time it's ever been done. Hey,
that's a t-shirt.
Hey, yeah, because you've never done it, so it's literally the first time it's ever been done because this person has never done this before.
Yeah. Well, in this
everything is terrifying.
Everything is terrifying. but like bringing this back to like I actually think that's really freeing and awesome too, and here's why. So recently I had the opportunity
Feel free to do cars.
Yes, I should. So no, I can never remember.
Whatever feels good. Feels good.
Recently I had the opportunity to do a jiu-jitsu instructional, and the first time, you're going to do one too? Hooray! So the first time that the person approached me about it, I was like, oh no, I could never do an instructional. No, what do I have to share?
Because I've never done it before.
I've never done it before. What do I have to share? What do I know that's different from what everybody else knows? And everything. Yeah, well, what I finally started to realize was, and it sounds like a song that you would hear on Sesame Street, but it's so true. I'm better at being myself than anybody else. And
I hear it. I hear the
it's
song.
It's a good song, right? So I want
the best you that ever was.
Exactly. I feel like Zach Galifianakis from The Hangover should be singing it because he's saying something about like we're the best friends that ever were. But the point being that I can't help but bring my own take, my own perspective to the jiu-jitsu I do because it's how I do it. And that perspective is going to be unique.
And people universally say how teaching helps you learn.
Yeah, and teaching helps you learn.
So let's say like it didn't work out at all. You learned things like
absolutely. And so the point is
and make connections.
Yeah. Sorry. And so the idea in terms of like making changes or taking risks is if I'm thinking to myself, well, what do I have to offer? What can I do that's different? What is it, you know, why would anybody listen to me? Why would anybody want to know what I have to say? Well, it's precisely because you're who you are and you bring your own unique perspective to things. And when I started to embrace that and realize, oh, I really do have a unique perspective because of the unique conflagration of all of my life experiences, then it just made it easier for me to say, yeah, I do have something to offer because what I have to offer is myself and nobody else can offer that. And it just made things easier for me because it really is authentic and it is something different and it's something that I truly can offer.
And you care about.
And I care about,
enjoy. Like, because he was like, all right, so like what if Val 10 years ago was offered a chance to do the thing? But like
I wouldn't have done it.
But would you still have value? Do you still have value?
Value? No, absolutely. I just didn't recognize it in myself, and so I was my limiting factor.
You always have or you could just wait forever and be like, well, when I have this much experience, I'll feel like I have something to offer.
Yep.
When I have these letters after my name, I'll feel like I have something to offer. You literally have something. But that's where you get into people have freedom of choice too, because they can. Oh, I didn't get anything from that. I'm gonna write a Yelp review. Or you could be like, okay, well, world, and maybe somebody else got something out of that. But
Yep.
like putting yourself out there is the only chance to connect.
And the other thing is
Putting it out there when it feels right.
Yeah, putting it out there when it feels right. And the only way for me to get better, quote unquote, at doing instructionals is to do instructionals. You know, the only way for me to get better at teaching is to teach. So I have to be willing. It's like in jiu-jitsu. I have to be willing to be bad at it first. Yeah, exactly. You know, I feel like my guard game just isn't up to snuff. You've been training for 3 months. Yeah, you don't have any kind of game.
Guess what? I'm learning how to bridge 14 years in.
Exactly, yeah. But I have to be willing to be not so good at something first in order to get better at it. And if that means being bad at it and putting it out there for feedback, well then I have a choice about whether I engage with that feedback. And you know, I can get someone to sort of filter it for me and say, yeah, you know, uniformly people didn't like this particular sequence. I don't have to read all the flaming meanness, you know, but I can still kind of figure out a way to get the feedback so that I can do a better job next time.
Yeah, you can choose to turn everything into a loving situation. Like, what sparked me for a second there was just thinking about like this guy Faye on your channel, like, you know, you always have somebody that they start doing a thing and you're like, oh look, that person's trying, you know, they're going to try that thing and they suck at it, and like how that, and that's what happened, like, and they just keep trying the thing, and then one day you're caught with that, and you're like, holy God, somewhere along the line, and you just see that happen. You're like, it's like a joke at first. You're like, oh, you're so
that's so cute.
You're so cute trying to think, okay, tap, like, yeah, jiu-jitsu's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome that way.
I totally see that. I was one of somebody with my friend Lena called me with a guillotine a couple weeks ago that was like super legit. And I was like, this didn't used to be super legit.
Like,
when you were learning this, it wasn't. Interesting. It sounds like a lot. I like can think about all the people that like made a concerted effort towards that thing. Whereas I think I'd be a lot farther along in my jiu-jitsu career if I had done more of that, because I was like, nah, that's not easy. I'm gonna do this. And so like how much I would have grown even more with stuff. And I already think I'm pretty good about it. I've had external validation that I'm good at jiu-jitsu, so obviously I am.
Absolutely.
So I came up with another game training Tuesday night that I'm sure I'll put in a jiu-jitsu article soon. And I also have one that I'm going to write about, like, about bullshit techniques. Like, it's another fun one I think I'm going to write soon. But, like, and then I realized halfway through, like, my training, I'd be like, oh, I have another game to put in my next iteration of that. Oh, this is just what Valerie does all the time. Call it the Valerie Worthington game. It was literally just, like, sneak preview. Keep the sound. No, it's keep the person's knees pinned together. And I was like, what happens? I just get these sparks all the time. And here's the thing, like I get sparks in my brain during training or whatever, and I act on them. Yeah. I'm like, let me try. Yeah.
And
let's see what happens.
Jiu-jitsu is such a fantastic venue for that if you're willing to experiment.
And I was just like, what does happen? And it detaches me from the outcome. Whenever you say what will happen, instead of saying I want this to happen, like it detaches you from an outcome, right? And that can be the best thing. So I was just like, I was pinning this poor guy's like knees together and like figuring out, like I was like, I can do it from the bottom, I can do it from here, I can go here, I can do this while I go around this side. And then partway through it, I was like, fuck, this is just what Valerie does to me all the time. I was like, this feels terrible. I know this. Yeah. Like, it freaking suits us. So that's a good one to play with. And then I was thinking about like making teams of the different goals of like what happens with, and like not telling the other team whether, all right, so you guys are doing this and you guys are doing knees pinned together, like, and then like see like one of the girls in Geese, Liz Susan, actually brought up something that you said when we were talking about stuff, because we were talking about like injury prevention and things like that, and she mentioned she was like, Valerie Worthington said this thing about did you hear about this yet? That like about you know, if you come to the end of a training session and you haven't thought about your partner once, that you might want to rethink about the way that you're approaching your training if you have like no compassion or no like awareness whatsoever of that person. And so is that kind of thing of like I'd be like, all right, here's team A, your job is this, here's team B, your job is to pin the legs together. Like, don't tell each other what they are, and I'd be curious to see if the teams like we're both focused on what they wanted, but we're also able to figure out what the other person
I like it. That's a good one.
If we actually get people that train, we can play with stuff like that. Absolutely. In the lawn.
So so that raises a question that I had for you. So based on what you felt when you saw the venue, and based on the idea that you had when you asked me to join forces with you, I know you don't like plans, but what are you anticipating, or what are you picturing for the retreat?
The best stuff comes from what I would like is that for everybody to realize beforehand in the world that they don't need this retreat, frankly. Like, honestly, be like, okay, like, I want to put so much stuff out there and so much content that people can just help themselves and get to their authentic state. And then we can all just hang out. Maybe they'll come just like to hang out. That would be great because we're so entertaining and interesting and pretty.
Neither of us plays the guitar, but we could find somebody.
We could find. I'm sure there'd be
play
people.
Guitar.
I was thinking of something. Anyway, but like, and doing that. But so I see a lot of organic stuff. There's just no way that I'm not gonna end up like working on people. Like, that's not what people are paying for. But like, if it's invited or if I see it, like, anybody that's friends with me knows, I'm just like, something right there. I have to press on it.
The last time we were on the mat together, we were chatting, and Sam. She didn't reach with her hand. I was sitting with my legs spread out, and she reached with her foot, and she started working on me.
I was like,
awesome.
Your thigh needs pushing here.
Yeah.
Like that, which helps me also use that for evil and jiu-jitsu. I'm like, she has a poor connection to the outside right hip. I'm going to start taking advantage of that. When you start detecting this stuff, you can use it for good or evil.
There you go.
But all fun.
Yeah.
So like, for me, I'm sure like that kind of stuff, I think I can say like kind of plans because it's not, this is why I like teaching conceptual jiu-jitsu, because it's not like I'm going to teach this. Like, it's pulling from all of your resources to be like, all right, the general idea is to get better at jiu-jitsu, and let's see what this crowd needs for that.
Yep.
So that's like, we have a lot of skills to come forward with that. And the idea is okay, like the generalization would be, all right, let's help people, like, it's to help people do what they want.
Yeah.
And to help them see a path towards doing what they want. And whatever that means. And that's going to probably be some mix of identifying the blockages, like a lot of stuff you can find in self-help videos on YouTube, for sure. Like, I would highly recommend the Kyle C's Welcome to Deep Down thing. I've been working my way through. It's like 11 hours long. So just like helping people be happier.
Yeah. Well, and to your point,
more connected to what is good for them.
Absolutely. And to your point, I think that different people are going to be at different stages along that path. So some people are going to have a goal. Whether it's a physical goal or it's a professional goal or a personal goal. Some people are just going to have sort of a general feeling of disconnect or dissatisfaction. Some people may be actively trying to escape something. And those are all kind of different levels.
But open the door. Ooh.
Yeah. So those are all kind of, those are all sort of like different stages along the path.
Space for that.
Yes, exactly. And
like, you are not being judged.
No, there's no, everything, in my opinion, everything we do or believe or say or feel is useful data. It's data. It's not something to be judged. It's something to be processed and used in the service of making more effective choices.
Okay.
So
cool.
What
got you into? I mean, everything. You can read Valerie's book to talk about jiu-jitsu stuff, but like, it's on my shelf, really.
I'll bring copies.
She might even sign them. I think probably knocking a lot of stuff off of pedestals would be a thing too. Yeah. I'd be like, that I think there's a lack of authenticity there. Whenever it's not fair to the person on the pedestal, and it's not fair to you either to not see like how you're all the same. Yep. You have different experiences and stuff, but like you're all the same.
And so in jiu-jitsu that happened. It's just there's like a pedestal built into the structure, like. A black belt is on that pedestal, and a brown belt is on a lower pedestal, and the white belt is like lowest of the low. But that doesn't, and people will buy into that. Oh, I'm just a white belt, so I don't deserve to have anything.
Or I think and even no matter what they are in the outside world, but like I have these theories that like your body knows everything that it needs to do, and that's one thing, like everything that it needs to do, and like jiu-jitsu is just a game. It is. Like, it's a game. Like, you're getting to, here's your goals. You're getting to those goals. Like, and so that's, like, you talk about people like white belts, you know, can be more difficult to deal with sometimes than more advanced people because they don't know what they're supposed to do.
They don't.
But like,
they don't act.
and they're more, because they're more creative.
Yeah.
Like, with stuff. And like, okay, well, like when you think about it just being like a game, I think that like, well, I guess that's how it started out anyway. It was like they're basically playing around on the lawn and like figuring out like, oh, like what happens if we do this? Like what's more effective? Like let's challenge that. And like, and everything that you've ever been taught in jiu-jitsu, you're putting your own identity on too, because it's an infinite number of possibilities combining you and this other person's energy. So like, if it's infinite just in your own movement, imagine, yeah, like the combinations there. So it has to be a generalization of stuff. I forget where I was going, but.
But another thing that I think is that I'm looking forward to with the retreat is sometimes having a change of venue, just a geographic change can really signal to
Maybe
our
there's a
bodies
migratory aspect to that. Maybe there's something to that.
Yeah.
Of like
to just this idea that if you sequester yourself, then there's something powerful about that, in terms of intention and in terms of ability to focus and being surrounded by people who are in the same vein and just having an opportunity to really spend some time targeting some of these things.
I think that can also show people like, look, if you surround yourself with people that are in line with you, look how much growth you can have. And I think that's something that people will realize, like, because they, okay, this has been great. I had a nice time in the sunshine frolicking, and now I've got to go back to my real life. But it's showing you a possibility of like, okay, like, if I make these changes and I surround myself with people that are in line with me, and I start making those hard decisions with things that feel good to me, like this is possible. And I do think that's an important thing. That's like, whenever I've taught jiu-jitsu seminars, like I don't generally like teaching at least all like a specific thing, because like it's hard to remember all the details of stuff, and I want you to be able to take it and run with it yourself and put your own spin on it, like the way you control things. And like, so that would be a big thing for me. Would be we doing our best to make sure that people, you know, as much as they can, take on things they can take out with them. It shouldn't, you know, the idea of you want to go to a retreat just because it's fun, not because you have to make a change. You know, like, why are you doing things like?
Yeah, and so, you know, I can envision some group work, some one-on-one conversations, some training, some awesome food, and some room for.
I'm talking about we can apparently like pick food from the garden and like cook it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
That's good energy, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic energy, and also wiggle room for kind of, you know, making changes on the fly. If people have requests or want things that we hadn't even
how
thought
often
of.
have you walked into a jiu-jitsu room with your plan and then like
just thrown it out the window?
Yeah,
just
like
thrown it out the window. Yeah, and
that's good practice for exactly everything you've ever done in life. Is like, okay, all right,
It's good
well,
practice for
instead of
life.
trying to force this, you know, we all have like kind of a shitty thing.
Yeah.
Let's do what actually feels right in the situation.
And the planning, I think that, you know, that like that preparation isn't wasted, because if you do think about your life conceptually, well, you still are trying to get to certain places, and maybe the tactics will be different based on what the environment provides or doesn't provide, but the kind of the general principle is the same. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'm feeling like we're kind of winding up a little.
I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, but
if anybody's still watching, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Hopefully you got something out of it. No, maybe we'll talk again before stuff goes. But June 23rd to 26th in Pauling, New York. Apparently reachable by commuter train, so that means it's reachable from a lot of places. But it's beautiful. Check it out. And just contact us if you want to register. Okay, Valerie at ValerieWorthington.com. My number is 443-365-6000, or you can contact me at Samantha at MoveWellPhilly.com. And we just want you to do whatever you want. that's all.
Yeah.
All right.
And because doing that is gonna
make the world a better place.
It's gonna have positive repercussions.
It's gonna have repercussions.
And that's good.
Yes. All right. Cheers.